I knew something was off when my new hiking boots never showed up. I'm Parker Lane, 39, divorced, no kids, and I work from home as a freelance systems engineer. I live in a quiet cul-de-sac in northern Arizona where everything's supposed to be peaceful. Except peace is impossible when your HOA president is a nosy, power-hungry menace named Cheryl Whitmore. She's exactly what you'd picture late 50s. Bleach blonde bob, oversized sunglasses, and a clipboard like it's a weapon. She runs our HOA like she's the sheriff in some dusty one-road town. She's fined people for having inappropriately patterned curtains, and she's always got something to say about my truck. Pickup trucks are not in accordance with the community aesthetic, she once told me while standing in my driveway, uninvited, but this wasn't about my truck. This was worse. Over the course of 3 months, I noticed a pattern. Amazon would send me delivery confirmations, but a lot of my packages just disappeared, sometimes small stuff like batteries or books. Other times, expensive items like those hiking boots, a new router, even a limited edition vinyl box set. At first, I thought maybe porch pirates were hitting the neighborhood. A few neighbors mentioned missing items too, but nothing ever turned up and nobody seemed to have any footage. That's when I installed the Ring camera. It was a quiet Tuesday morning when I caught her red-handed. I'd ordered a new electric drill. Got the delivery notification at 11:15. Checked the camera footage around noon. And there she was, Cheryl Whitmore herself, strutting up the walkway in her usual pastel cardigan, glancing around like she was in a spy movie. She picked up the box, tucked it under her arm like it was hers, and walked off like it was the most natural thing in the world. My jaw actually dropped. I rewound the footage, watched it again. She didn't even hesitate, she didn't knock, didn't look surprised, just took it and left. I wasn't going to confront her right away, I wanted more. So I waited. Over the next 2 weeks, I had 5 more packages delivered, nothing valuable, just decoys. And every time, Cheryl made her move within an hour. I had clips of her stealing each one. Once, she even waved at a neighbor while walking off with my box. I compiled the videos, labeled them by date, and backed them up in 3 locations. I wasn't about to let this slide. This wasn't just petty theft, it was a federal crime, mail theft. And Cheryl was the face of our HOA. I started asking neighbors if they'd noticed missing packages. A couple said yes, but most had no idea. Cheryl had been careful, only targeting a few homes, never too frequently. But the smug way she carried herself, like she owned the whole place, that didn't sit right with me, so I made a plan. One more bait package, this time with a surprise inside, and a little help from someone who knew exactly how to blow this wide open. I reached out to my cousin Dean. He's a postal inspector based out of Flagstaff, and while we're not especially close, we've shared enough Thanksgivings for him to pick up when I call. I explained what I had videos of someone repeatedly tampering with packages delivered to my doorstep. I didn't tell him who it was. Not yet. Parker, if you're serious, I need every timestamp, every clip, and your permission to open an investigation, he said, not a trace of hesitation in his voice. I've already organized everything by date. I even labeled the types of packages, I said, and I've got one more delivery coming tomorrow. I think she's going to take it. He asked. You'll see. He agreed to come down the next day and asked me to leave the bait package out as usual. This time, I filled it with shredded newspaper, a Bluetooth GPS tracker tucked into a false bottom, and a note inside that read, "This is being monitored by federal postal inspectors. Smile for the camera." The next morning, I left the box on the porch just like I had before. I positioned the Ring cam just slightly higher to get a better angle of the street. Dean parked a few houses away in an old green Taurus he used for stakeouts. He'd brought a partner with him, a quiet woman named Elise who barely said a word but took meticulous notes in a small leather-bound pad. At 11:42, Cheryl strolled up the walkway like it was a routine chore. She paused briefly, maybe noticing the Ring cam had shifted. But then she did exactly what I expected. She grabbed the box, turned on her heel, and walked right back toward her house, 2 doors down. No rush, no guilt, just entitlement. Dean waited exactly 90 seconds, then stepped out of his car and walked straight to her door. I stayed inside, watching the feed through my laptop as he knocked. When she answered, I could only hear Dean's voice through the mic. Calm, measured, but firm. "Ma'am, I'm with the United States Postal Inspection Service. We have probable cause to believe you've been intercepting packages not addressed to you. We need to speak with you about what you just removed from your neighbor's porch." Cheryl's lips moved fast, but her body language told the real story. She backed into the doorway, hands fluttering at her sides like she was trying to decide whether to slam the door or run. Dean stepped forward, showed his badge, and said something I couldn't hear, and just like that, she was letting them in. I didn't leave my house. I didn't need to. I'd already done my part. But I kept the Ring feed open and watched as Dean and Elise spent upwards of 20 minutes inside. When they came out, Dean had a small cardboard box under one arm, my box, and Elise was holding a plastic evidence bag with what looked like a pair of women's gardening gloves inside. 2 hours later, Dean called me. "She confessed to taking at least 16 packages," he said. "Not just yours." We found several open boxes in her garage, hidden behind storage bins. Some still had shipping labels. "Are you filing charges?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "We have to. Mail theft's a federal offense. There's no wiggle room when you have video, a confession, and physical evidence. We're coordinating with the local prosecutor." That night, the neighborhood lit up like a gossip wire. Cheryl's arrest hadn't been public yet, but word travels fast when two people in plainclothes walk into someone's house and leave with evidence bags. I kept my mouth shut, even as texts from neighbors poured in asking if I'd seen anything. The next morning, a notice went out from the HOA's vice president, Alan Tran. It was short and formal, announcing Cheryl's temporary leave of absence from her role due to personal matters. No mention of theft, no mention of the federal investigation, just a lot of vague phrasing meant to keep things quiet. Alan was a retired firefighter, the kind of guy who never wanted drama but always stepped up when something went sideways. That afternoon, he rang my doorbell. "Can we talk?" he asked, his expression unreadable. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "I assume you know," he nodded. "I've known Cheryl for over 10 years. I never suspected this. I'm not here to defend her, Parker. I just want to make sure we don't let this tear the neighborhood apart." "I'm not looking for revenge," I said, "but I'm not letting it slide either." He looked relieved. "The board's meeting tonight. We'll be voting on her permanent removal. I'd like you to attend, just so we can document everything properly." I considered it for a moment. "I'll be there." That evening, I walked into the community center with a laptop under one arm and the printed list of stolen deliveries in the other. The room was filled with folding chairs, about 24 residents, and the nervous energy of people who just learned their HOA president might be a felon. Alan started the meeting with a careful tone. "We're here to address serious allegations involving former President Cheryl Whitmore. Mr. Lane has volunteered to present his findings." I stepped up, plugged my laptop into the projector, and played the videos. One by one. No commentary, just silent footage of Cheryl stealing boxes that weren't hers, walking calmly back to her home, sometimes waving at neighbors. The room was silent except for the occasional gasp. When the final video ended, I handed Alan the statement from Dean confirming the investigation and outlining the charges. Elise had emailed it to me that morning with permission to share. Nobody asked questions. There was no debate. The board voted unanimously to remove Cheryl, effective immediately. Alan announced that the HOA would be conducting a full review of its leadership, finances, and complaint procedures. After the meeting, several residents approached me. One woman, Marcy from the far end of the cul-de-sac, thanked me with tears in her eyes. She'd lost a sentimental package last year, a photo album her daughter had mailed from college. "I thought I was going crazy," she said. "I never imagined it was someone in the neighborhood." A week later, Cheryl was formally charged with federal mail theft and obstruction. A search of her home revealed dozens more items, some already opened, others still sealed. The authorities found a spreadsheet on her computer where she'd logged what she took, when, and from where. It was meticulous. Disturbingly so. The court set her bail high. Her attorney tried to argue diminished capacity and stress-related behavior, but the evidence was overwhelming. A judge ordered her to surrender her passport and remain under house arrest until trial. Meanwhile, our HOA went through a complete overhaul. Alan took over as interim president. They opened the books, found thousands of dollars in misallocated funds, and brought in an outside auditor to fix it. For the first time in years, people actually showed up to monthly meetings. We passed new rules that required transparency, term limits, and mandatory financial disclosures. As for me, I got all my packages back. Most were returned in usable condition. The hiking boots had a scuff on one toe, but I wear them anyway. They remind me of what persistence and a well-placed camera can accomplish. Cheryl's trial is still pending, but the neighborhood's already moved on. Kids ride bikes past her house without looking twice. People wave when I drive by instead of pretending not to see me. And the woman who once fined someone for planting non-regulation daffodils now spends her days confined to a house she used to rule like a queen. Funny how quickly power disappears when it's built on stolen boxes and silence. 2 months after Cheryl's arrest, the neighborhood was quieter, but not in the peaceful way. More like the air before a storm. While Cheryl's house sat still behind drawn blinds and a county-issued ankle monitor, the real chaos was unfolding inside the HOA's records. It started when Alan Tran, now acting president, asked me to help digitize the HOA's internal documents. "You're good with systems, right?" he said at a board meeting, holding up a battered flash drive like it was radioactive. "We've got 20 years of records on thumb drives and floppy disks. Half the stuff's unreadable. I need someone who won't quit when the printer jams." I didn't exactly leap at the offer, but I agreed, not out of loyalty to the HOA, but because something about Cheryl's theft still didn't add up. She hadn't just stolen for the thrill, she'd tracked, logged, and buried everything with precision. That kind of behavior didn't stop at cardboard boxes. I had a suspicion there was more she'd buried, and I wasn't wrong. The files were a mess. There were incomplete expense reports going back over a decade, bizarre payments to consultants with no listed services, and maintenance invoices signed by Cheryl with no work orders attached. One document listed a landscaping project that supposedly cost over $28,000, yet the property in question had been untouched dirt for years. I flagged what I found and brought it to Alan. "She created dummy contractors," I said, handing him a printed spreadsheet. "She billed the HOA, approved the payments herself, and either pocketed the money or laundered it through fake vendors." Alan stared at the paper so long I thought he might actually combust. "This isn't just mismanagement," he said finally. "This is embezzlement." We met with the rest of the board in Alan's garage that evening. No cameras, no minutes, just 5 folding chairs and a space heater. He presented the findings without fluff. Once he finished, no one argued. They voted unanimously to refer the matter to the county auditor and file a formal complaint with the Arizona Attorney General's office. The fallout came fast. 2 weeks later, detectives from the Financial Crimes Division arrived with a search warrant. I watched from across the street as they hauled out boxes from Cheryl's garage, bank statements, HOA records, and a laptop wrapped in a static-free bag. Some neighbors watched from behind curtains. Others pretended to garden while openly gawking. No one spoke to Cheryl. No one helped her. What they found wasn't just embezzlement, it was systemic fraud. For nearly 9 years, Cheryl had orchestrated a revolving scheme of fictitious invoices, inflated repair bills, and fabricated service providers. She'd funneled over $94,000 into personal accounts, hidden under aliases and shell companies. And it wasn't just Cheryl. The investigation uncovered that her cousin, a contractor listed on multiple maintenance jobs, didn't exist. The address on his tax forms traced back to a P.O. box in Flagstaff. Payments to this contractor had totaled more than $30,000 over 4 years. A deeper dive showed that a small plumbing business she'd claimed to use regularly had been dissolved 5 years prior. The state filed additional charges: wire fraud, tax evasion, misappropriation of community funds. She was now facing more than just mail theft. This was years of orchestrated criminal activity built into the very structure of the HOA. Alan called an emergency meeting at the community center. This time, everyone came. Residents who hadn't attended a single gathering in years showed up in work clothes and sweatshirts, folding their arms and narrowing their eyes like they'd just found termites in the walls. Alan stood at the front, rigid, holding a copy of the audit summary. "I want to be clear," he began. "This didn't happen overnight. Cheryl exploited our lack of oversight, our trust, and the apathy we allowed to fester, but it stops now." Someone in the back, a retired Army vet named Marcus, stood up. "How do we know more if you weren't in on it?" Fair question. Suspicion was thick in the room. "I've opened every account for review," Alan said. "Every transaction will be made public. I've asked the state to appoint a financial monitor to audit our board. We're restructuring everything. No more blank check authority, no more single-person approvals." That helped, some. But trust was broken. After the meeting, I was heading home when someone flagged me down. A woman I barely knew. Alina lived 2 streets over. She was in her 60s, wore gardening gloves even when not gardening. "You were the one with the videos, right?" she asked. I nodded. She looked around, then leaned in. "Cheryl once threatened to fine me for parking too close to the sidewalk. Said if I didn't play ball, she'd find something else to write me up for. I didn't say anything at the time, figured it was easier to just back up a few inches. But now, I'm wondering how many people she pushed into silence. It stuck with me. How many people had stayed quiet when they noticed something strange? How many just paid the fines and moved on? Over the next month, Alan and I worked with the new oversight committee to digitize and post all HOA financial records online. We set up a public ledger for any future expenses, with real-time updates and board member signatures. Transparency wasn't just a goal, it was a requirement. Meanwhile, Cheryl's legal situation spiraled. Her attorney tried to argue that she'd only taken what she was owed after years of unpaid volunteer work. The judge didn't buy it. Not when the state presented clear bank transfers, forged invoices, and a confession written in her own hand found in a password-protected file titled simply, "In case." The trial became a spectacle. Local media covered it as a cautionary tale about unchecked HOA power. Headlines read like satire. Neighborhood president turned package pirate faces 24 felonies. The courtroom was packed every day. I testified on the 3rd day. They asked about the videos, the logs, and how I discovered the scheme. I answered plainly without embellishment, just the facts. The prosecutor thanked me. Cheryl's attorney didn't even cross-examine. By the end of the week, the jury handed down convictions on all counts. Cheryl was sentenced to 7 years in state prison, with the possibility of parole after 4. She was also ordered to repay every cent to the HOA, a restitution order that would likely follow her for the rest of her life. The judge didn't mince words during sentencing. "You occupied a position of trust in your community. You used that trust as a shield to commit theft, fraud, and intimidation. This court finds your actions deliberate, sustained, and deeply corrosive." It was over, at least legally, but the damage to the neighborhood would take longer to heal. The board held a vote to dissolve the HOA's current charter and re-establish it under a new structure. No single president, rotating leadership every year, and mandatory third-party audits. They even created an anonymous complaint form that bypassed the board and went straight to the oversight monitor. I declined when they offered me a position on the new board. "I'm not a committee guy," I said to Alan, who only laughed. "You're the reason we're not still neck-deep in this mess," he said. "If you change your mind, the seat's yours." I didn't. Instead, I helped build a new neighborhood website, one that listed bylaws clearly, showed every dollar spent, and posted recorded board meetings for anyone to watch. No more backroom fines, no more mystery charges, no more Cheryl. The neighborhood slowly came back to life. People started chatting at mailboxes again. Kids chalked drawings on the sidewalks without anyone threatening to fine their parents. Marcus organized a community cleanup day. Eleanor planted sunflowers that no one tried to uproot, and me? I still check my Ring cam from time to time, not because I expect trouble, but because I know what happens when no one's watching. Justice didn't just come from a camera, it came from refusing to stay quiet. From following every breadcrumb. From not backing down, even when it would have been easier to just move your truck or pay the fine. It turns out, sometimes the best way to fix a broken community is to shine a really bright light on every corner it tried to keep dark. I didn't expect to hear anything else about Cheryl after the sentencing. She was gone. The house sat unsold under foreclosure, and the board was operating under its new structure. I'd gone back to work without interruption, and for the first time since moving in, I actually looked forward to walking around the block. That changed when a manila envelope appeared in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name, printed in block letters on the front. Inside, a thumb drive and a single sheet of paper. Drop the act. You didn't stop anything? I didn't recognize the handwriting. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank, but when I plugged in the drive, everything changed. It contained a folder labeled turquoise, all caps. Inside were scanned receipts, PDFs of account ledgers, and a few screenshots of what looked like internal HOA emails from years ago. One of the files was a scanned property survey, and that's when I realized this wasn't just about Cheryl. This was bigger. The survey showed boundary lines for several lots in the community mine included, but the lines had been altered by hand. Red pen extended the HOA's common area into what was clearly private property. My property. I pulled up my deed, along with the original plot map from when I bought the place. The discrepancy was obvious. Someone had redrawn the lines to include part of my backyard in the HOA's jurisdiction, which explained why, last year, I'd received a warning for unauthorized fencing along my southern edge, a fence that had been well within my property line. I checked the sender metadata on the screenshots. Most were from 5 years ago and originated from a personal email address tied to someone named Georgia Fenwick, another former board member who moved out 2 years back. I remembered her vaguely, sharp suits, always wore matching turquoise jewelry. She'd resigned suddenly, citing health reasons. I ran the name through a few databases and found a recent bankruptcy filing, along with a civil suit filed in her name against Cheryl Whitmore. The suit alleged that Cheryl had conspired with 2 other board members to create a shell company called Turquoise Municipal Services, which they used to funnel HOA money into personal accounts under the guise of property management and land use consultation. Georgia claimed she was pressured into signing off on forged documents, including redrawn surveys, before she finally stepped away. I called Dean. "She's not wrong," he said after looking through the files. "Those kinds of alterations are felony fraud if they were used to justify fines or property seizures." "They were," I said. "I was fined for a fence that wasn't even outside my line. Parker, this goes beyond stolen packages. If you're willing to move forward, I can get the state ag's office involved again. This could qualify for a land fraud investigation." I didn't hesitate. "Do it." The next step was collecting testimony. Dean coordinated with the Attorney General's office, who sent 2 investigators down from Phoenix. They met with me, Alan, and 3 other homeowners who'd also received boundary-related citations over the years. One of them, a retired nurse named Linda, had actually paid to remove a portion of her own garden because Cheryl claimed it was encroaching on HOA green space. She'd kept the letter, same language, same signature. The AG's office subpoenaed the HOA's full property records, including the original maps submitted with the community's charter. Then, they requested access to all communications from Cheryl's tenure. Within days, the investigators uncovered a pattern. At least 7 properties had been falsely cited based on fraudulent maps. In 2 cases, the HOA had even threatened legal action to force residents to remove structures, both of which had been built within legal boundaries. Then came the real kicker. A financial cross-check revealed that Turquoise Municipal Services had received over $50,000 in land use consulting, fees none of which had ever been accounted for in the HOA's public budget. The AG's office called it what it was: real estate fraud. They reopened the case against Cheryl and added new charges. But this time, the net spread wider. 2 former board members, including the HOA's first treasurer, were indicted. One had already left the state, but was arrested in Nevada and extradited. The other, an older man named Carl, still lived in the community. I saw him being led away in handcuffs while walking my dog one morning. He didn't say a word, just kept his head down as the officers loaded him into the car. The charges included conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery of legal documents, and willful misrepresentation of property lines for financial gain. Cheryl, already serving time, was hit with 3 new felony counts. Because they involved forged legal documents and financial manipulation targeting private property, her sentence was extended by another 6 years. Alan held another emergency meeting in the community center. This one was unlike any other. Half the room was filled with reporters. The other half, with homeowners who looked like they'd just been told their foundations were made of sand. "We're going to do something no HOA wants to do," he announced. "We're placing a moratorium on all enforcement actions until an independent land survey is completed and verified by the county. No fines, no warnings, no citations. Nothing until we know what's real." The room broke into applause, not polite, not hesitant, but raw and relieved. I was approached by a woman I'd never seen before. She introduced herself as Mila, a recent buyer who'd moved in just 2 months prior. "I almost didn't buy here," she said. "I read about Cheryl online, but then I heard what you did, that you pushed back and didn't let it die quietly. That's why I signed." I didn't know how to respond to that, not really, so I just nodded. Over the following weeks, the county surveyors walked every inch of our neighborhood, flagging markers and correcting lines. 4 fences were reapproved. 2 properties were reclassified as fully private. And 1 small parcel of land, an empty gravel strip Cheryl had once claimed as reserved for future HOA development, was legally declared part of Linda's lot. She planted roses there the next day. The HOA bylaw committee, now composed of 4 new members and 1 returning, rewrote the enforcement code from scratch. No one was allowed to issue citations without third-party verification. All meetings were live-streamed. The HOA's power to levy fines was cut in half, and the appeal process no longer went through the board, it went through the city's mediation department. One quiet Saturday morning, Alan stopped by my place. He had a small box under his arm. "What's that?" I asked, leaning on the porch railing. He opened the box to reveal a plaque, just wood and brass, no fanfare, to Parker Lane, it read. "For turning on the lights," I laughed. "You didn't have to do that." "I didn't," he said. "The neighborhood did. I hung it in my garage months past. No more threats, no more fines. Just normal neighbor things, barbecues, kids with sidewalk chalk, Mila organizing a food drive." The HOA, stripped of its fangs, finally did what it should have been doing all along, helping people, not policing them, and Cheryl. She was now inmate number 67142. Her name no longer struck fear, just embarrassment. A cautionary tale whispered to new board members like a ghost story. The manila envelope turned out to be mailed by Georgia Fenwick herself. She'd sent it out of guilt, hoping someone would finally do what she hadn't. I heard she was moving to Oregon, trying to start fresh. As for me, I still check the Ring cam. It's habit now. But these days, the only thing I catch are teenagers sneaking snacks from their parents' Amazon boxes, which, frankly, feels like justice.